So last week I shared with you 2 key points to achieving and putting together a brilliant sales plan, which is linked to my best ever video on YouTube, which is called Help I Don't Have a Sales Plan. And in this week's video, we're going to talk about stages 3 and 4 in that 8-stage plan and go a bit deeper into those areas to help you create a plan that can achieve incredible sales success for your business. So if you've watched my sales plan video and you've seen the first week where we've talked about the target and the customer, you're going to love week 2 where we focus on how do you identify those customers and then create content that adds value in their world. So let's use this week's video to dig deeper into the identifying content areas so that you can develop a sales plan that gets you incredible results. Let's have a look at the video. So in week 1, we focused on the target and the customer that we want to put in place for the plan. And we now know if we've got a clear identification of who we're trying to engage with, it's then about how do we identify and find some of these people for us to hopefully start to do that sales work with. The goal around this, if you remember, is we do need lots of these potential clients to work with. Whilst we'd love to work with everyone that's in that specific industry or those specific characteristics, the chances are it's not going to happen. So we need to do a bit of background work as sales and business professionals to identify our audience. A good example of that is a lady I'm working with at the moment who sells a fantastic new services into really innovative companies that look after their people. And I asked her to identify a group of those people through Google and through social media that she can try and reach out to. And what she's been able to do is to generate on an Excel spreadsheet or in a CRM system a list of 50 people who are the ideal type of client and person for her to start engaging with. So the key thing we've got to then do is just do some of the basic work. Google searching is a great way to do that. If you know your industry is insurance companies or HR directors or IT directors or CEOs, whatever, you can start to then search on Google. Google will give you information in a great way. You can even use AI tools to input and to provide information that can help you build that database. Start by focusing in maybe an area where you're close to, which is close to where you live. Or maybe you might start to focus on a list, for example, of national companies that have won awards. The key thing is Google Desk Research gives us so many insights that we can then collect from people's websites and their social media profiles. People say, oh, I can't get hold of information. And there are ways in which you can use it, as we'll talk about in a moment. But the best way is to do Google research. I absolutely will even encourage you to maybe if you've got kids or nephews or nieces or young family members, maybe you can give them a bit of pocket money for them doing a bit of that Google search for you. If you're specific about your requirements, I'm looking for HR directors of companies in the manufacturing space, the chances are if they start searching on Google and start working through each county or each area at a time, they'll build a list of people up. And if that list is perfect for you based upon the ideal customer, you're going to be in a great position to then identify people to then start talking to and having conversations with. So the critical thing is to start doing some basic Google searches. Put maybe an hour aside in the diary to start looking at that and build up a spreadsheet or on a system of all of those people. The key thing I encourage you to do is to develop a list. People, of course, you can go down the route of buying a list, but I always have a phrase that I use, which is build, not buy. When you buy someone's email information or contact details, the chances are they will be upright and accurate, but a lot of people get quite frustrated when people just try and sell to them and they wonder where they've got their details from. Whereas if you're able to research and get to know that person, because on their social media profile, they're going to share stories, they're going to share information about awards they've won or things they've been doing that you can then start to use and craft within your sales message. So I'd encourage you to try and do some of that work yourself. You'll also dig into the things that are critical for them. You'll see issues that matter to them, things that they're searching for, things that are key for that person, which you can then note down and write down for when you're using those conversations. So focus on building and identifying the key people. And the more this work becomes incredibly hard if you're so vague about your customer. But if you've done the work we identified in point number 2 to really know that customer, know the audience, then this becomes easier and we can develop a list that we can then have. And ideally, let's say you want to get 10 new customers on board this year, you probably want a list of 75 to 100 people here. If you want 500 of these companies, you probably need a list of 5,000. So that work's going to be bigger. Now, of course, if you then want to develop a bigger list, you might then be able to start using tools and technology to do this. There are tools out there such as Zoom Info where you can basically get access to data and make sure that you can get numbers and contact details of people. But I guarantee you this, and I've used Zoom Info, and by the way, I've got a slight bad experience of using those guys, sadly, but I will be clear, and if you want to reach out to me and let me know what it is, I'll tell you. But the key thing is, if you buy any of these tools, if you're not specific about your audience and who they are, then you'll get rubbish data back. There's a great saying we always use in the agency world, rubbish in, rubbish out. So if your brief is rubbish, the results are rubbish. If you're clear about what you want, you're going to get better results. So there are tools and technologies that can help you find data, but I sometimes think the best way to do that is put the time in the diary, put an hour in, make sure you try and create a list of 10 people. Try and find 10 people a day or a week, for example, that you can build up to your database. Create that list of 100, 200 people that are perfect. It may even be that they're not customers, it may be influencers or people in that industry that other people look out for. Identify the group of people, start to do that work to engage with them, and hopefully then we're going to build up that list and we can then start to do that sales value and interaction work to get the results we want. And the final point around this in terms of the identification is look at your existing customers. You should be building this list based upon the successes you've had. So maybe talk to your existing customers about other people that they may know. The chances are, if they're a HR director, they're going to know other HR directors or an IT director. They'll have networks. They'll have groups that they'll be connected to. So maybe ask that person which other groups they're part of. Who are the other people that they speak to that are similar roles to them? And maybe they could even do an introduction to you. That would be great, and we'll talk about that a bit towards the end as well. But the reality is we can identify this list, focus on building that database. You want, I would say on average, if you need 10 customers, you want 10 times that. So use a ratio of 10 times the number of customers or people you want to sign up in order to be able to bring that list together. If more of those people come through, great, you're going to have a great year. But the reality is not all of those are going to come through the process. We need to have at least 10 times that number to give ourselves a realistic chance of putting in place the plans to get business with them. So once we've identified our audience, the key thing you're asking then is, James, how do I start to then go and reach out to them and do business with them? So if you've watched any of my videos or know who I am as a sales mentor, you'll know that I'm a massive believer in you creating content to educate and help your marketplace before you try and sell to them. One of my biggest pet hates and frustrations is when I see salespeople and business people that just try and go in and try and sell straight away to someone without really understanding who they are and trying to give before they give value. So my focus on creating content is this. If you really believe in what you're doing and you're passionate about the work you do in your company, then you're going to want to be able to focus on solving the problems of your audience. And I'll give you a little tip. Try and sell to someone where you literally say, hey, I want to work with you, will you buy my product or service? Or then focus on, hey, I think you in this industry have this challenge. Here's a resource or here's something we've done to help you solve that challenge. I guarantee you that the second route is going to be a route that's going to make that person think, oh, that's quite helpful and quite useful. People that go in with just an intention to serve themselves and feather their own nest just get rejected, or if it's got to be highly unlikely that it's going to land on that person's desk at the right time. The reality is we've got to focus on the problems of our audience. What are the things that really frustrate them? I asked you in the last video to create problems and identify the problems of that audience. So what we want to then do is create content that tries to solve some of those problems. Let's say, for example, in my industry, I've got CEOs that are really struggling to see new business growth happening. So what I've got to try and do is create content which might be a guide or a resource of 10 things to be able to do to inspire your organization to generate new leads. Or it may well be that I can give them a quick tip or a tool or something they can use to share with their team. The point being is if that's their problem, if that's their issue, when they see content and materials that actually they think that's helpful and useful, they're going to think, okay, I'll keep an eye on that person. They're not always going to want to straight away come and say, I want to work with me, but it's going to make me think they're valuable in their mind. The method that I talk about here is give before you get. Show sales value before sales vanity. It's all very well to talk about how great you are and what you do, but the prospect doesn't care about that. What they care about is what you can do in their world. So what you can give them, how you can make them think that's helpful, that's useful. Give them things that are going to solve their problems, and they're going to be standing up and taking note of who you are and what you're about. So when you do reach out to them, and we'll talk about that in the next few videos, you stand a better chance of opening up a conversation. What type of thing should you create? Here's the list. The list is endless. It can be blogs, it can be videos, it can be guides, it can be checklists, it can be podcasts, it can be templates, it can be quizzes, it can be any number of things. The reality is you need to create lots of them because not all of these things will work. Different things in marketing work in different ways. You're watching this video probably because you've seen my sales plan video. I've got 340 other videos I've done that you probably haven't seen. But the reality is you've seen this one and that's what's worked. The thing is there's no guarantee that every piece of marketing or content or information you create will be successful. You've got to try, providing you focus on the problems and give people a method and some simple wins to solve that and then give them value, then it's hopefully going to work. But I always focus and tell people to do this as well when you're creating content. Focus on creating value. Show sales value before sales vanity. And I like to think about doing 3 things when I've sent something to a prospect or engaged or shared something to my network. Firstly, I want them to think. How do I want them to think after seeing that? What do I want them to think about me? How do I want them to feel? How do I want them to feel about me as a person? And then what do I want them to do? And in many cases, if it's certainly at the top of the funnel, it may well be that I want them to think, oh, he was really helpful. I really feel like he understands who we are and my company. I'm going to keep an eye on him, or I might even look to follow him and see what he's got on LinkedIn or social media, or I might even keep an eye on his website or ask one of my team to keep an eye on his website. The point being is I want them to think, feel and do those things, and that's critical. And do you want people to think that you're a self-serving business person that only cares about yourself and that you feel that they don't care about you and that you only care about feathering their own nest and you do want to be in a position where you want to ignore them and avoid them? If that's what you want to happen, then carry on trying to sell to people too early. Focus on creating lots of content that give value, that solves problems, that really gives people resources. I've got over 300 videos. I've got nearly 100 resources available on my website, and I will give it to as many people as possible. Why? Because I know people will still want to buy my services because, yeah, they like the guide and they like the video and they like the resource, but the chances are they're going to want some further help to be able to really put those plans and elements that I've put in place into action. People pay for the implementation. They pay for the value that you can give. And we want them to think we're helpful and useful, that we can solve their problems and make a difference in their world. Great content is the route to doing that. And especially if you sell business to business services, you have to be creating content before you start getting most people to engage and want to do business with you. Focus on creating content, focus on identifying the audience so that you make the content so relevant for them. By the way, I'm going to put a link into a video I did a couple of weeks ago on great content titles that you can use to identify, to engage with your audience. Have a look at the video, the link's there. And the reality is if you put those in place and create content on a regular, daily, weekly basis, you will start to see results for who you are and what you focus on. It won't happen overnight, but those people that do this as part of your sales plan is going to be the basis for incredible foundations for great results. So look, there's video number 2 on how do we identify in our sales plan who we're targeting and how do we create content for them. So I hope it's been helpful and enable you to dig deep into those issues. Next week, we're going to focus on 2 other key areas which are critical to make your sales plan come to life. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you've enjoyed. If you have, like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get my videos notified to you every time they get released. And I'll see you next week for another video on how we can make sure that that sales plan comes to life.